So imagine you have a business or there's a business you're supporting and you would like to get a customer support chatbot up on your website to answer users' commonly asked questions. In the last video of this series, we used the power of Botpress to build a fully functional customer support agent for our fictional clothing boutique, all in less than 5 minutes. You can find a link to that video in the description. I recommend that as a starting watch. Now today, in the second video in the series, we'll be diving a fair bit deeper into the Botpress Studio and showing you how the Workflow Studio works, and we will be building a second customer support agent chatbot that instead of asking users to converse with it, it will simply present a menu of options and users can simply select one of the options presented to them. We'll also be showing today how to do lead generation, the ability to collect information from users, which for a business of any size is incredibly valuable. Now, everything we're going to be doing today, this is a no-code tutorial. So while Botpress allows the robust integration with code at all levels, this is going to be as accessible as possible. And speaking of accessible, everything that you see today, you can do right now with the free-to-start, pay-as-you-go Botpress plan. So if you want to spin up your account right now, at the end of this video, you'll have a fully functional customer support agent that you can put online up on your website. With all that being said, let's get bot building. Welcome back to the Botpress dashboard. In front of us, we have the clothes hanger bot that we built in the last video in the series. Mind you, link to that is in the description. And today we're going to be opening this up to see a bit about how it works, but then build an entirely new bot on top of it. Now, if this is your first exposure to Botpress and you haven't watched the last video and you haven't built your own clothes hanger bot, that's actually technically okay. Everything we're doing here today, you can do on top of an entirely blank new bot. So if you're new to Botpress, just spin up your account, create a new bot. Do skip through the bot building wizard in the top right corner. It's great, but we don't need it today. And whether you have the clothes hanger bot or a brand new bot, all we're going to do is hit edit in Studio in the top right corner. All right, welcome back to the Botpress Studio. You might be familiar with this page, but today we're going to be spending most of our time in the Workflow tab. So on the left, you have these two squares joined by a connection. This is the Workflow section, and this is the page we're going to be spending most of our time on today. This is the Workflow editor, and it's my favorite part of Botpress. This is a physical representation of your bot. It kind of shows the logic and the nodes and how they're connected, and this is where you do most of your bot building in the studio. So if you open up your clothes hanger bot, you notice you actually already have some nodes here. And this will show you a kind of a simple structure of a simple but fully functional Botpress bot. When it comes to the Workflow Studio, there's two major parts you use when building bots. Firstly, you have nodes, which are these boxes that you can give access to tools and information and tell them to do things. And then you have connections, which are these lines that join the nodes. And the idea here is we're going to be making a series of nodes that each have tasks and conditions and ideas, and we're going to be connecting them with connections, and this will become the map of the logic of our bot. Now, our bot here right now is actually really simple, and it might be easy to understand. Again, if you have built the clothes hanger bot already, we're going to have a start node. This is where the conversation starts. When anyone starts talking to your bot, they start here, and then they'll follow the connection to this one autonomous node. There are two kinds of nodes when it comes to Botpress. We have autonomous nodes and standard nodes. Now, autonomous nodes are the really clever types of nodes that use the power of AI and large language models. You have to give them instructions and then give them access to tools. And then using context clues and the conversation they're having with users, they'll figure out what they need to do based off of their own instructions. So if we click on this node, you'll see on the right, these are the instructions that we gave our bot when we built it in the last video. These actually are instructions we technically ended up giving to this one autonomous node. So when the user is interacting with this node is going to know that it is a customer support chatbot. It knows about its tone. It knows about how it should talk to people. And then here underneath that instructions box, you'll see this search knowledge. This is technically a card. And the idea is that we've given this autonomous node the ability to search its knowledge base. So again, in the last video, we took all this commonly asked questions and answers for our website, the clothes hanger, and we added it to the knowledge base. So this autonomous node knows how it should talk. It knows what sort of tone it should be using, and has the ability to search through the knowledge base to answer user questions. Now, autonomous nodes are very powerful and very flexible. And we have a very simple bot here. We just have the start node. It connects to the autonomous node. This autonomous node knows to talk to users and knows that it can touch the knowledge base and look up information. And that's all our bot is doing. Super, super simple, basically one node. And we have a really functional bot that we built in the last video. Now, autonomous nodes are incredibly powerful and incredibly flexible, but there's another kind of node you can use when building bots in Botpress, and those are called standard nodes. And standard nodes are much more simple to understand. You just give them things to do, and they just do all those things in order. They don't use LLMs inherently or AI to understand user context. It's all up to us to figure out where our node should be and in what order. But despite that, that might sound not very flattering when compared to an autonomous node. There's some really good reasons to use standard nodes within your bots. And today we're going to be building a bot that entirely uses standard nodes. There's some benefits to that, mind you. Standard nodes, while it requires a bit more setup, our first video is like build a bot in 5 minutes. This one's going to be a bit more in depth. But standard nodes don't require you to spend a lot of AI spend. They can be faster. They can be more accurate as well. And I'll show that off as we build a bot today. Now, our autonomous node here, we're not going to use this in our bot, but I don't want to delete it just in case that in the future, if you want to go back and use this autonomous node, I want it to still be there. So you can rebuild the bot that you built in the close hanger. So what we're going to do is, you see this connection, the line between our start node and our autonomous node? If you hover over it, it'll have a red X. If we click on it, it just disconnects the autonomous node from our start node. That means this node is no longer part of our workflow. It's no longer part of our bot. It's just kind of hanging out here. And at any point in the future, if we want to rebuild this bot, all we have to do is reattach it by dragging a connection between our start and our autonomous node, and we can rebuild what we have. But just so that we're not deleting in a way that we can't repair, I'm just going to delete this connection. I'm just going to drag our autonomous node out here to the left and just say, we know where that is if we ever have to go back and rebuild our old bot. There's also a YouTube video here that teaches you about autonomous nodes. I'm just going to right click on it and hit delete node. You can watch it. You'll definitely learn something, but we don't need it for our bot itself. All right, and with that, we have our clean studio here, a tabula rasa, if you will, and we're going to go off and build our first bot. Now, at any point in the studio, if you right click on the background, it'll have this drop down menu, which offers you all the sort of stuff you can add to your workflow. And while you see autonomous nodes here, we also see standard nodes, the other sort of node, and let's build our first standard node. Now, standard nodes, I think, are actually a lot easier to understand than autonomous nodes. Standard nodes, they don't have instructions. They don't have a large language model. All they do is we can add cards to them, and cards are basically tasks or things we're telling them to do. And then anytime your bot wants to execute that standard node, it just does all the tasks from top to bottom. So again, we have to tell it exactly what we want it to do, but it's very quick, it's very accurate, and I'll show you how this works. So say that we have a user on our website that opens up our chatbot and says hello. What do we want the first thing our bot to do? Our bot should probably respond and also say hello and introduce themselves. So that means we want our bot to write text. And luckily, it's really easy to get a standard node to write text. We need to add a card that writes text. So to add a card to our standard node, we can just click on the add card and it will slide out this tray that shows you all the cards you can add to a standard node. As a caveat, in the near future, this tray might not be here. It might be in the center of the screen, but regardless, the functionality will be the same. And you see here, we have all these different options of things we can tell our standard node to do. And while this could be pretty overwhelming, a lot of the stuff we want to touch at the beginning is just at the top. You see the first card here is called send messages, and text is one of the options. And that's what we want. We want our bot to send a text message. So we just click on the text card, it will add it to our node, and you'll see here on the right, we have a box that's highlighted that says, what message do we want this text card to send? And so we're just writing in here what we want our bot to send when this text card fires. And we want it to say hello. So let's just write a quick greeting. And so I wrote in a quick message here. Hello, welcome to the close hanger. I am the virtual assistant. How can I help you? And that is what this node is going to do, is once the bot hits this node, it'll write that text, and that's as simple as standard nodes can be. Now, there's two things we need to do really quickly. Firstly, at the top of our node, it says standard one. That is just the default name of this node, but I'd highly recommend anytime that you build a node, whether it's a standard node or an autonomous node, do rename it. And this is for the sake of clarity, and you can keep yourself organized. So this node greets the user, so we'll call it the greeter, and that should be good. And the second thing, which is very important, is that we need to connect this node to our workflow. Again, when somebody starts a conversation with the bot, it starts at the start node. And if we want them to reach this, we just have to connect the start node to the greeter node. And so now when they talk to our bot, it launches the start and our bot will type this out. Just to show you how this works, you can always go to the emulator in the top right there. And this gives you the ability to test out your bot. So if we write hi, notice it quickly says, hello, welcome to the close hanger. I'm the virtual assistant. And it does exactly our greeting. You can also see here in the studio, it highlights this box in kind of a gold color. And that's to show you where the user is in their conversation journey. Now we get to this part of the conversation, no problem. But from this point forward, we have to keep building the workflow and building out the conversation we want our bot to have with our user. Now, our bot should be answering commonly asked questions, but instead of having the conversational method that we had in our first bot, we're going to be trying something different. So instead, we want our bot to present a menu of different commonly asked questions. So instead of our user having to type in the question they want, they can just select the button that says, tell me about the store hours or tell me about the shipping policy. Now, I think this is actually a really good workflow. Some users don't want to type out all their questions. Just clicking a button on a menu is really accessible. So we're going to try that. Which means the next step in our conversation, our bot should present the user with a bunch of commonly asked questions from a menu that our user can select. So let's go build that. So we want to build another standard node. And again, if we right click here and hit standard node, that puts it on the page. And of course, we want to connect these two things. So after the greeter fires and says hello, now we want to go to this standard node, and this standard node will then ask the user for their choice from a menu of different options. So now this node needs to present options to our user, and luckily there's a card to do that. So we want to click on the add card button. It'll pull out the card menu. And what we're looking for right now is we're trying to capture input from the user. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's this section called capture information, and this is what we're looking for. We want to present some options to the user, and the user should pick one option from the menu. Now, there are a lot of options here. Luckily, the one that we want is the first option. It's called single choice. So our bot is going to present multiple options to the user and then wait for them to make a single choice from the options. So we're just going to click on that and it'll add it to our bot. And then in the right side of the screen, we have our inspector, and this is where we have to fill out what this card's going to do. So the first thing it asks is, what's the question we want to ask the user? So we should write a little message here asking the user to pick an option from the menu. So let's keep this simple. How can I help you today? And then underneath it, you'll see the section that has choices. And these are the items we're going to be presenting to our users, and they can click on one. So let's make our first item that they can choose. Let's just call this store hours. And so if the user clicks on this, they'll learn a bit about the store hours. Now, if we want to add more buttons to this menu of choices, we just hit the plus button here on the right. So let's say our next button would be returns and exchanges. Cool. And we can keep doing this. Let's add another button. This one will be about the shipping policy. Now, we've added 3 buttons here. Feel free to add as many as you'd like to cover as many commonly asked questions as you're expecting, but I'll just leave it at 3 for the sake of this tutorial. Now, I will actually add a 4th button. So I'll add a 4th one and I'll call it I need help with something else. And I really like having an option like this that should cover our bases in case there's something the user wants to ask that just doesn't appear on our menu. We'll be setting this one up a fair bit differently, so we'll get to this once we set up our first 3 buttons, but having this sort of fallback plan is really, really important to keep your bot to be able to answer as many questions as possible. All right, so we added our 4 buttons here. We've attached this, and I'll show you how the buttons work in a second. Now, the last thing we want to do is we want to just make sure we're always naming our nodes to keep us organized. So we'll call this one menu choice because this is where the user is making a choice on the menu. Now we can test this out really quickly just to show you what this looks like. If you made any changes to your bot, just make sure you hit a refresh on the emulator and we can talk to our bot and see how the conversation looks. If we say, hey, it says, hello, welcome to the clothes hanger. It does its greeting and then immediately follows this connection to our choice menu. And it says, how can I help you today? And it presents a bunch of different buttons. Now your user can click on these buttons. And if we click on it, well, nothing happens because we haven't set anything up, but that is our workflow. And so far, using only standard nodes, things are working perfectly. You also notice our bot is running really, really quickly. And that's because it doesn't have to work with an LLM. It doesn't have to do any AI spend. It is just running from node to node to node. And that is going to be a big benefit of the way we set up this bot. We're minimizing AI spend and we're making sure it's as fast, as responsive as possible. It's a really nice reason to use standard nodes. Now, what happens if the user clicks on store hours? Well, we need to tell them about the store hours. And what you'll notice here, we barely mentioned this, but nodes will have these ports. So on the left side, the top left side of every node, you have this entrance port. And also on the bottom right corner, you have these exit ports. And those are the sort of things we've been drawing connections through. So our start node goes to our greeter node goes to our menu choice node, and so on and so on. But you notice that every time that we added a new option to our single choice menu, these produce their own exit ports. And this works maybe the way that you intuit it, that if the user hits store hours, they will go to whatever node we attach to the store hours, which is pretty simple. So let's make a standard node attached to store hours. And all we want the standard node to do is tell you the store hours. So we're just going to have another text card that writes the store hours. Now, as a useful tip, if you're ever dragging a connection away from a node and you just let go of the mouse, it'll open that menu that shows you the sort of nodes. And if we hit standard node, it'll automatically connect it. I'll be doing it this way from now on. It's a bit faster, but if you want to right click, create a node and then attach it by mouse, you can do that too. This is just a bit more smooth. So now we have a node that should be telling the store hours, because if the user hits a store hours button, our bot should display the store hours. So we're going to just simply add a card to this node. It'll be a text card. And all we need to do in here is write our store hours. So let me type those in. All right, I just wrote some store hours here into this text box, and this will work the way that you think it will work. Really quickly, we're just going to rename this to store hours. And then if we go back to the emulator, we hit refresh, we can give our bot a test. We'll say hi, we'll say we want to know about the store hours, and our bot will very quickly display our store hours. Now, I do want to put a quick warning here is that these store hours we're presenting are just simply the store hours we wrote into this box. This is not that different than when we did it in our previous bot where we put our store hours in our knowledge base. If your store hours ever change, you need to change these in the card that is writing your store hours. It's not going to automatically know your store hours from your website, the same way that our knowledge base in our last bot is not going to know if the store hours change. You'd have to go into the knowledge base and change them. Now, there are ways in Botpress that you can link these store hours to your website. So it always just grabs them from your website. So if you update your website, it updates it everywhere. That's outside of the scope of this video. But otherwise, just remember, if your information changes, you need to change your information in the bot builder because that's all it's showing. It's just showing the text box here. But otherwise, our bot works perfectly. It very quickly puts out the store hours. It's going to be super accurate. It's very fast. No AI spend. We're in a good spot. Now, the question is, what's the next step here after we show the store hours? Well, my guess is the bot should ask, are you good? Do you want help with another question? And if they don't, we end the conversation. But if they do, the user should be able to ask another question. So let's continue building out our workflow. So that means that we will grab the exit port from our store hours card. We'll add a new standard node. We're going to ask the user for a choice. Do they have another question? Do they not have another question? So we'll add a card. We'll scroll down here to our single choice capture information card, and we'll add it to our new node. Our question here will be, is there anything else I can help you with? And we'll have two options. Yes, I have another question. Or we'll add another option with the plus. No, I'm all good. Cool. So we have two options here. Either they want to ask another question or they're not. Now, really quickly, we'll rename our node another question just to stay organized. And again, here we're going to have two exit ports. The yes port, which means they want another question, or the no port, they're all good. Now let's deal with the no port first. If the user has no more questions, that means our conversation should end. We can tell the chatbot, you're all good, you can shut down. And the way to do that is we want to connect our no, I'm all good port to the end conversation node. And the end conversation node actually already exists. It started here in our studio. It's just over here. It was already on the table. So we're just going to slide this thing over. This is our end node. And when we reach this, it will end the conversation. So we just want to grab no, I'm all good and attach it to the end. Now, technically, when you hit the end node, there's more things that you can do, and we will kind of build this out in just a couple minutes when we get there. Technically, we want to sign out. We maybe want to ask the user for their email address if they want to join our mailing list. So there's things you can do within the end node, but otherwise, if your conversation is meant to end, you should send to the end node, and then we'll sort that out in a bit. Now, what happens if they have another question? And this is actually where the studio gets really interesting. Because again, if the user has another question, we should just bring them back to that menu where we displayed all the questions and they can make a single choice. So all we're going to do is grab the yes, I have another question and build a connection all the way to the front of the menu choice. And you'll see now we have a map. Let me just reorganize this quickly so it's a bit easier to parse, but we have built this sort of map and you can trace the path. So now when the user says that they have another choice, we can trace it from the end and it goes back into the front of the menu choice. And then they'll be put back here and our conversation can technically cyclically go forever if the user just keeps asking about the store hours. Now, very importantly, when it comes to Botpress, every entrance node can have multiple connections to it. There's multiple ways you can end up in the menu choice card, but every exit node can only have one exit. And this makes sense if you think about it. If we had two things coming out from store hours, how would the bot know which way to go? So every exit is exclusive, but every entrance can have multiple ways to get in there. And again, we can test this really quickly. Let's go back to the emulator. We'll hit refresh. We'll say, hey, we'll ask about the store hours. It'll tell us about the store hours. Is there anything else I can help you with? If we choose yes, I have another question, it says, okay, how can I help you today? And it puts us back to that menu. If we say store hours again, it'll give us the same store hours. If we say no, I'm all good, you'll see it says that our conversation ended because we got to our end node, and that is exactly everything we want our bot to do. That is the logic. It's really simple. All we have to do now is flesh out the returns and exchange and the shipping policy section. And these are going to be very symmetrical to what we have just done. So now if we want to fill out our returns and exchanges option, we just drag out a standard node. We add a card. We'll add a text card. And within this text card, let's just write out our return and exchange policy. Let me just grab that. All right. So I pasted in our return policy. Returns are accepted within 30 days and so on and so forth. We're just going to rename this node because we want to stay organized. Return policy. Now from here, after we display the return policy, we should once again ask the user, do you have any more questions? And we don't have to build that node again. We can just simply take this and attach it to another questions node. And our workflow is actually entirely done from this point forward. After we say the return policy, we ask them, do you have another question? If they say no, we go to the end and our bot conversation ends. If they say, yeah, I have another question, well, we follow the path all the way back to the menu choice and the loop continues. Super simple to set up. Again, we're not rebuilding things. We're just attaching paths to existing things to build this sort of loop. And no different here with the shipping policies. We'll drag this out. We'll do a standard node and we'll just write a bit about our shipping policies. We're going to add a text card. All right, we wrote a little policy there. We're going to name our node for organization. And once again, once we're done with this node, we should ask the user, do you have more questions? So we'll attach that here to another questions node. And we're honestly totally good. I'm just going to drag these nodes around really quickly to try and make things look more organized, but everything is working just fine here. So this is our bot. So far, really simple. We have a greeter. Then we ask the user to make a choice from a menu. Depending on their choice, we write out certain text. Regardless of the text we've written, we ask them, do they have another question? If they don't, we end the conversation. If they do have another question, back to the menu they go. Super straightforward, super simple, and very easy for users to work with. All they have to do is click the button. Now, we still have to build out this last button. I need help with something else. And we're going to set this one up entirely differently. If the user has a question that does not appear in one of these menus, we're instead going to ask the user to write down their question, write down their email address, and we'll send their question and their email address to a human at the clothes hanger, and the human will be able to email them back, hopefully in the next day or so, to respond to their question, which the bot was unable to respond. This is super, super valuable. A lot of times users will have questions that the bot just can't answer, and we want them to have the ability to reach out and sometimes get that human touch. Say that we receive enough questions about a topic, we can just add that to our single choice menu so that we have less emails coming in. But this is a great way to make sure that users are not leaving your business, not leaving your website, being unsure of policy or product. This is really great. And again, having that human touch, that response is very valuable. So we have to build this one out a fair bit differently. So let's show you how this works. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the exit port from the I need help with something else button, and we'll build a new standard node. Now here, we need to do two things. We need to ask the user for their question, and we need to ask the user for their email address. I guess first, to make sense, we'll add a card. We'll just add a text card, and we'll explain what's going on here. I wrote a short message here. Apologies if we can't answer your question. If you can leave your email address and your question, a human from the clothes hanger will get back to you. And so the next thing we have to do is we have to ask the user for their question, and they need to type in their question. So luckily, there's a card for that. We'll just add another card here. And in the menu on the left, we're going to be scrolling once again down to capture information. And we need to capture information from the user, but the kind of information we want to capture is technically raw input. Raw input is just going to give the user a text box, and they can write whatever they want into it, and we will just grab that information. So we're just going to use raw input. Now, I think this is actually a really good time to point out that every standard node can actually have multiple cards in it. And when the standard node executes, when it's reached through the conversation path, it'll just do every card from top to bottom. So as a quick example, I'm going to go back to our first greeter node, and I'm just going to add another card here, and I'll just add another text card, and I'll just say hello world here. So when our conversation starts, it'll first say hello, welcome to the clothes hanger, and then immediately after it'll say hello world. So let's just test that out to say hey, and that is exactly how it works. So again, every standard node can have multiple cards, and cards will go from top to bottom. Now, I would caution not to put too many things in the same node. It makes things less clear to parse, and it also makes it harder for you to reuse parts of your bot that you've already built. So for instance, there's nothing wrong with us adding the greeter to this menu choice card. And if we restart our bot, it should work just fine. Hey, and you notice it says hello, welcome, and then immediately goes to the menu choice. But because this is in here, if we ever come back to this, so we ask about the store hours and say, yes, I have another question, it keeps greeting us over and over and over again. And that's because we put too many things into the same node. So sometimes it does make sense. I just want to let you know that you can put multiple things into the same node, and you will a lot of the times. But for our use case, it actually made a lot of sense for us to separate everything to keep things clear and to make these bits reusable, which is quite nice. All right, now jumping back here to our standard node. So first we said apologies. We explained we want the user to input their question and input their email address. So with this raw input card, it's almost the same as a single choice card. The question we want to ask the user. So let's ask here, what is the question you would like to ask? And instead of asking a single choice, all we have here is the option to just store the result in, and then we can create or select a variable. So if you have any passing familiarity with coding, the idea of a variable should be no surprise to you. In short, what we're doing here is we're saying, give us the question and then take that question and store it somewhere in the memory. We're going to give it a nice name like user question. So later on in our bot's workflow, we can bring that question back up. That's all a variable is. You're basically saying, take that information and put it aside somewhere special so we can talk to it. We can use it again in the future. So we just need to functionally give this question a variable name so that later on we email that question to us. We can just say, email the question we stored at user question. So all we need to do here is drop down this menu and create a new variable. So we're going to write a name that we'll remember that makes sense. So we'll just call this user question. We'll hit enter. And now the result is going to be stored in a new variable called user question. You also notice in the bottom left corner of the studio, you have all our variables listed, and we have one workflow variable called user question. but this is a nice way that you can track what's stored in there when you're trying your bot in your emulator. Cool. So the user has written their question. We've stored it to the value of user question. We can pull it up later. The next thing we want to do is we want to ask a user for their email address, and this functionally works just the same. We're going to add another card. Again, cards will fire from top to bottom in our standard nodes. We'll scroll down once more to the capture information, and we could do raw input here, but there actually is a card that's bespoke made for email addresses. It's called email address. The only difference here is that if a user writes something that is not in the format of an email address, it'll say, hey, can you try that again? That's clearly not an email address, but technically a raw input card here would work as well. So we'll add an email address card, and this works no differently than our raw input card. What's the question? We'll say, what is your email address? And then we have to save the email address the user writes in to a variable. So we'll create a new variable and we'll just call it user email. Sick. New variable is created. And now we've saved our user question and we've saved our user email. All we have to do now is take the question and take the email, and we want to send it to someone at the close hanger. And we're going to do this by just sending it by email. We're just going to have an automatic email our bot will send to the close hanger that just says, here's the user's question, here's the email address, please get back to them. Now to do that, we actually have to dive into the Explore Hub to add an integration. So while Botpress has a lot of functionality already baked in, there's all these cards you have access to when it comes to standard nodes. And mind you, autonomous nodes have their own cards. If you want to have more access, if there's different tools you want to talk to specifically outside of Botpress, there's a big possibility that those tools already exist and you just need to grab them. In the top right corner, there's the Explore Hub. So this is the Botpress Hub, which is a collection of integrations and plugins and workflows, both made by Botpress themselves, but also made by people in the community. And so this is a nice way to search up to add additional functionality to your bot. It's very likely the thing that you want to add to your bot, that additional functionality already exists in the Botpress Hub. Just search it up. Now for us, we want to add additional functionality so our bot can quickly email us when it receives a question and an email address. And so if we search email here, there's a really cool Botpress plugin that's made by the Botpress Plus team called Email Notifier. And all we want to do is install this integration. So this will become a card we can now add to our standard nodes. Just hit install integration. This is all entirely free. It takes a second and we're good to go. Once we close this out, so now if we add a card to our node here, if we scroll down a bit, we'll find the Email Notifier card. It's also totally worth noting. You can search for your cards in the top left there. So if we just write email, that'll cut the chase. We'll have this new card here called Send Email, and we just want to drag that in or click on it, and we'll add it to your standard node. This has a couple sections that we want to fill out. Firstly, we have the to section. If you hit a plus here, this is the email address you want your email to be sent to from your bot. So here we could write something like support@theclosehanger.com, write basically whatever email address you want to receive your email. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to paste in a burner email address that I can show you how this works. Now for the subject, this is the email subject. We'll say question from Closehanger chatbot. And of course, the body section is where you need to fill out the body of your email. And here we should be putting in the question the user is asked and their email address. And those are both pieces of information that we've stored in variables. So we just need to add those variables. So to write the information stored in the variable, you have to write this sort of formatting. You start with an @ and then we write workflow dot, and then we just want to write the name of our variable. So we'll do user question, and that will work. Let's just hit enter. And after that, write workflow dot user email, and this will write out the email we've stored in that variable. This is the specific format to writing out the information stored in these variables. And if we want to make this a bit more clear, we can write some English here. So the user's question, colon, great. And then here we could write the user's email address. Perfect. And that should work just fine. And let's give this a quick test. So firstly, we'll just rename this node. So let's call it question grabber. That's fine. And we'll go back to the emulator and we'll do a quick refresh here and we'll give this a shot. We'll say, hey, I need help with something else. It says apologies. What is the question you would like to ask? And I'll say, are you hiring? Maybe we're looking for work. What's your email address? We'll say realemail@kojico.ca. And that's good. Now, if you jump over really quickly to our burner email address, we received a subject question from Closehanger chatbot. This is a notification from your Botpress bot. It will always write that. It says the user's question, are you hiring? The user's email address, realemail@kojico.ca. Now, this is working exactly the way that we want it. We're receiving the questions and the email addresses so we can go back and respond. Now, I do want to say, if you want to integrate your bot with a CRM, a customer management software, because you're receiving hundreds of emails, I wouldn't recommend this path. There are integrations in the Explore Hub you can find out that allows you to integrate your Botpress with Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever your major CRM is. But for small tasks, I find this workflow works really, really quite well. If you're answering hundreds of emails, this is probably not what you want to be doing. But for small businesses, this is just phenomenal. So this totally works. We'll jump back to the studio and we just need to route out the end of this node. So after the user has sent their email, why don't we actually just write a little card here so that we confirm that we received their question, their email address. So we'll just write out a quick thing here. Cool. So we'll just write a quick message. It's nice to know that the thing went through. And then from here, we should probably ask them, do they have another question? And luckily we've already routed that. We'll just grab this here and set it up to another question and we're good to go. Now our bot is fully functional. Let's just restart the emulator. So again, if we talk to it, hey, welcome, we can ask about any of these topics and we can add as many topics as we want. We have another question. We can send an email if there's something we don't know. This is a very, very functional bot. It's very quick, it's very responsive, and it's very easy for users to interact with. Clicking on buttons is incredibly accessible. Now, there's only one last thing I want to do here, and that is this end tab here. Now, this is our end node. And again, when the user is done asking questions, they end up here. And this ends the conversation. But more accurately, what it actually does is it jumps to another workflow. On the left here in our workflows, we've been working in the main workflow. That is the majority of our conversation. And there's a bunch of other workflows that by default your bot will have. But once we jump to the end node, it jumps into the conversation end workflow. So if we click on this, it will open up a totally different workflow. And technically, when the end node is hit, we end up here on explicit ending. Then there's technically a node or nodes you can add here. And then we finally get to the true end. All I'm saying is that whenever we reach the end node, you actually end up here, which means if there's any sort of like automatic response or message we want to attach to whenever somebody closes the conversation, it says they're done with the conversation. If we just put all that stuff here, anytime the conversation ends, it will all fire the stuff that we've put here. So let's put some stuff here. Why don't we say, again, this is just a standard node. They've called it handler. Let's just call it goodbye. And then we can just add a normal text card here. So we can just say, thanks for visiting the close hanger. And that message will appear anytime the conversation ends. Now, after we say thanks, I think this might be a good time to try something out. When the user closes the conversation, why don't we ask them if they want to join our mailing list? Now, the close hanger has an equally fictional mailing list where they send out deals and show what's new at the store. And having users join that would be very valuable for a business. So we can ask a user if they want to sign up for the newsletter to receive deals and offers and all that great stuff. So if we hit add card here, we want to ask the user for a question. It's a yes or no question. So if you scroll down here to the capture information section, let's just add a single choice card. And we'll just set this up asking the user if they want to join our mailing list. All right, would you like to join the Close Hangers newsletter? We regularly send out updates on products and so on and so forth. And then there should be two options here. Yes, I'm in, and no, I don't. So we'll do yes, please. And then we'll add another choice. No, thank you. All right, so we have two choices. We'll start with the yes, please here. And so we'll ask the user for their email address. So we'll call this email asker. Again, it's good to stay organized. And we're going to add a card here in which we want the user to write in their email address. So we know actually how to do that. We'll scroll down to capture information. We'll add an email address card and we'll just ask, what is your email address? Now we have to save that to a variable. So we're going to create a new variable here and we'll call it email for mailing list, something like that. So again, when the user writes in their email, it'll be saved to this variable. Now, what are we going to do with this email that we've collected? We technically could set this up the same way we set up our I have an unanswered question, where we just go ahead and send that email address to somebody at the close hanger so that they can add that to their mailing list. I think we're just going to try something slightly different here. So we're going to take all the email addresses we receive through this method, and we're just going to save them to a table here in Botpress. And then ideally later, a human from the close hanger will go through the table, grab all those emails, and then add them to their mailing list, whatever way that they'll do that. So that means we need to make a new table so we have a place to store all these emails. And you can do that by going to the left and going to the table section. Here, you want to hit the new table button to create a new table. And we'll just call this mailing list emails. We'll hit save. And this creates a new table here. The table has a created at and updated at section. Those are automatic. And we just want to add a new column where we can write down users' emails. So we'll hit add a new column. We'll just call this name of the column emails. That's it. We can leave all these settings the same and we'll hit save. Now, basically all you want to do is tell our bot that whenever they get a new email address, save it to a new row in this table. So we're going to jump back to the workflow studio. We'll have to go back to our conversation end workflow. And then down here at the email asker, we want to save those emails to our table. So we're going to add a card. And in the execute section, there's a whole bunch of cards that care about tables. And we just want to insert a record. So that's going to insert a new record to a table. So we're just going to add that. This is relatively straightforward. So we want to select what table we want to add to. There's two options. The one we want is the mailing list emails table we just created. And then for every column in your table, it'll have a box here. So it's asking us what value do we want to save in that email section in this table. Now here we want to say, okay, we want you to save the information stored at the email for mailing list variable that we just made. And so you could type this out the same way that we typed out the variable before, where you start with at workflow. and then you write email for mailing list. In fact, it auto-completes. If you just hit enter, you get there. But a nice thing here as well is that if you ever see this app button on the right, it's a box that usually gets a variable. If you click on this, it'll just display all the variables. So if you just click on this, it'll insert it for you. So that means this insert record card will take the information stored in the email for mailing list variable and save it as a new record in the mailing list table. That's exactly what we want to do. After that, let's just say thank you. We'll just add a new text card and say, thanks for joining. Cool. So we have their email address. That's great. We're just going to route this to the end because we're fully done the conversation. Hey, future editor Andre here. I realize in hindsight, I forgot to show off that we can check the table to see the updated email addresses. So say someone's talking to your bot, either here in Emulator or on your website when you upload it. So what is your email address? Real email at verizon.net. Cool. Any email address your bot gets will just be added to your table. So if we go over to the left, back to the table section, and we go to the mailing list emails table, every single email address will be added as a new entry on your table. So just make sure somebody from your business, from the clothes hanger, for our example, is going through this and adding these emails to their mailing list. Also, if you're outside of the studio, if we go back to the dashboard, you can check these tables from outside of the studio. So just here on the dashboard level, if we go to the tables on the left and we go to the mailing list emails table, the same table is accessible here. And that's it. All the email addresses will be showing up in this table as they come in. Just make sure you're adding them to your mailing list. And with that, back to the video. Now, the last thing, what happens if the user says, nah, I'm good. I don't want to sign up for the mailing list. Something we haven't explicitly talked about is all standard nodes. They will have this default exit port at the bottom. And just to show you how this works, I'm going to add a card here. And I'm just going to write a card here and I'll say, no worries, have a great day. Cool. And why I'm adding this here is just to show you what happens if you ever click on a single choice and the single choice does not have an exit port routed from it. So for instance, if the goodbye node fires, it'll first write this thanks for visiting message, then it'll ask the user for a single choice. If they say yes, please, it'll go down to the email asker. But if they hit no, nothing happens. It'll just continue now going through the standard node. It will wait for a response. It receives the response. The response is no. There's nothing attached to the no. And so the standard node is just going to continue going down and doing all the cards underneath that. So if the user hits no, we don't route out here. It'll just go down to no worries, have a great day. And then this default exit port, then it will reach that when it hits the bottom of the node, and then that will go on to the end card. So this is just to show you that every node has a default exit port. And if it does ever manage to reach this because no thank you, I'm good is not routed to anything, it'll just fire. So this is a nice way to shortcut things so we don't have to build another standard node here. In theory, you could build this out and build a standard node that says no worries, but this is a nice way to show you that the default exit nodes are still useful, even if you have single choices. So this actually should be it. I think our bot's entirely done. Let's just test this out really quickly. We'll jump back to the emulator. We'll hit restart. We'll say hi. We'll just ask about the store hours. It says, do you have another question? We'll say, no, I'm all good. And then this will bring us here to this end node. So it says, hey, would you like to join our newsletter? If we hit yes, please, it asks us for email address, soup@kojaco.ca. Says, thank you and have a great day. And it'll send us to the end. And if we do the opposite where we say we're good, so hey, returns and exchanges, I'm all good. Do you want to join? No, thank you, I'm good. It'll just say, no worries, have a great day, and then just go out the exit. So that is our bot, and I think we're totally good to go. We just want to put this up on our website. So what you want to do is when you're done with the bot, hit the publish in the top right corner. Since I've done the last video, the publish button has been updated. It's actually a fair bit nicer now. We just want to hit publish changes. Anytime you make any big changes to your bot, or actually any changes to your bot, make sure you publish it first. Otherwise, those changes won't be pushed out to wherever you have your bot hosted. And it's done. And now getting this up on our website is even easier than it was in the last video. Firstly, there's a preview here if you want to see what your bot looks like, but we just want to embed this. So if we want to get this up on our website, up on the clothes hanger, all we need to do is hit this embed section. It'll open up another page that will show you where the embed code for your bot is. That throws us to our bot identity page. You can change what your bot looks like. There's a bunch of ways to customize their appearance, but for now, we'll just go to the deploy settings. And this is the embed code. This is all we need. And just like last time, all we need to do is we need to copy this code and paste it into the head section of the HTML code of our website. It is just that simple. So let's jump over to our code. So this is the HTML code, and just in the head section, this is our old bot. We're just going to paste on top of this. Just will format it nicely. We'll just hit save and we're good to go. So we jump back to the clothes hanger, hit a refresh, and our new bot is here. So we can talk to it. Hey, just like we expect, our menu options are here. Let's talk about the store hours. It displays our hours. Do we have another question? Let's say that we're good. So it's going to say thank you, and it'll ask us about our email address if we want to sign up for the mailing list. Let's say we do it, and it works just the way that you expect. That's our second bot here up on the clothes hanger. It's a menu-based system that uses the power of just standard nodes. which are still very powerful and very robust and allow you to create these hard-coded workflows that I'm a big fan of. Again, autonomous nodes, still very, very powerful, and you can build bots that use a combination of both standard nodes and autonomous nodes for some even bigger results. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you have a fully functional bot up on your website. We'll be back in the near future with more tutorials talking about integrations and different workflows. If you have any hot topics that you would like to hear covered, please don't hesitate to hit me up in the comments. Also, if you want to join the Botpress community up on Discord, is fantastic. If you want support or a place to hang out, you can find a link to that just below. Most importantly, happy bot building.